Hello, and welcome to the Berkshire Football Stories chat podcast with me, Rob Davies, Tom Canning.
Hello.
And Abby Ticehurst.
Hello, hello.
The three of us haven't been together in the podcast studio for a little while, so it's a sort of return to form, if you will, after a enforced mid-season winter break. But we're back and raring to go. But unfortunately, the football on the pitch hasn't been kind to us. There's been a lot of rain abouts and a lot of cancellations. So what we're going to do instead is have a little bit of a look at how our clubs in Berkshire are getting on this season so far. A slight mid-season review, if you will. We're going to touch on a few of the leagues about, so where there's some interest for Berkshire clubs, and talk about a few different individual teams as well as league promotion races or relegation battles in general. But first, how are you two going? It's been a while, like I said, since we've been in the podcast studio. How have your Christmas and New Year's been?
Really good, yeah. It was hectic, but yeah, otherwise pretty good. Yeah, as you say, there wasn't a lot of football. I think unless you followed a team with a 3G pitch, but even those suffered. I saw there were a couple of games off at Burnham for snow and stuff. You know, having a 3G pitch doesn't mean that you're not affected by snow and ice. So
exactly, yeah. How about you, Abby? How are you over the Christmas and New Year period?
Mine was the opposite. Mine was very nice and quiet, but I appreciate that. I'm all
good.
about the quiet Christmas and the New Year. So, no, all good. And Ascot's 3G was unaffected by the weather, so I'm going to be smug about that.
Oh, very good. I didn't realise. When did Burnham put a 3G pitch in their place?
in a little while.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
I
good.
couldn't tell you the exact date. I've only really paid much attention to Burnham since we sort of took them under our wing this season. I sort of they were a team that I was very, very sort of aware of, but and I must admit I've been very impressed with what they do off the pitch and online. They've really made that place look like they're quite busy. It's open for business, so to speak.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, Burnham weren't actually one of the teams we were going to talk about today.
No.
So let's shuffle into our mid-season review. Where to start? Shall we start with Reading Women? So probably one of the highest status teams in the county at the moment. Certainly one of the highest status teams that we cover. Listeners to the podcast and fans of Reading will be aware of stories regarding Emma McCandy that have come out this week. It's a very serious news report and article that we won't be covering today purely because we feel like tagging it on to a sort of pithy mid-season review isn't the right time to discuss this topic. We'll go into it in more detail in a dedicated pod later in the week, so watch out for that one. But for now, we're just going to have a review of Reading women's season on the pitch rather than the headlines of it. So I hope you understand that, and we will talk about it in more depth at a later date. So with that in mind, over to you, Abby. How do you think Reading women are getting on this season compared to where you thought they'd be? And your ambitions for the team in at the beginning of the year?
I'm trying to remember where did I say I wanted us to place now? I feel like it was very ambitious when I consider where we are at this point.
I think you were like, well, I think you said maybe 7th or something like that. I can't, I'll have to dig out the prediction league you did and sent over to me. But I felt like you were sort of on the outskirts of the making a challenge for the European places, but ultimately falling short, I think.
I don't think I was gunning for that. I think at one point we were sort of floating around 3rd and 4th, and I was very ambitious, thinking, we might stay here for a while. But no, I mean, we've fallen on the wayside, haven't we? So, I don't know really. Like, obviously, we've had a bit of a break for a while, so it's kind of getting back on the wagon, I suppose. That there was the game against Spurs. That win was very good and quite surprising actually as well.
The win was good. The match was not.
Well, yeah, that's true. That is very true. And then whenever we play Chelsea, there's always 5 goals scored, but we never win. So
Yeah.
it's normally 5 against us. So the fact that we got 2 against them, like on the last league game of the year last year, was good. But yeah, I think it was only. I assumed it might be a bit more of a bloodbath rather than 3-2. I don't really know where those 2 goals came from. And I suppose rounding off the year with a win against Coventry, but also getting knocked out of the Conti Cup is very, very Reading, I suppose, is how you could describe it, really. We never do well in cups, so I think I've accepted that at this point. Tom, you so delightfully say to me about that all the time, so I think I'm just going to have to accept it. So yeah, out the Conti Cup, as per usual. I think right now, really, I was talking to Ben Waite the other day, actually, who we've had on the podcast before. The DMs that we send each other, it's just ramblings about Reading, really, to be honest. We're essentially being bolstered by Brighton right now, doing not like just a bit worse than us, and obviously your beloved Leicester doing awfully as well, Rob. So I'm assuming we're probably going to see them go down, but I mean, a bit of next season predictions. I assume we will be in that position next season. It doesn't look like we're going to make any signings in this transfer window. There's been a few rumblings. I did write a post about it. Van Havermaet supposedly wants to move to United, but I don't think that's likely to happen. I think we're potentially in the market for a Ghanaian midfielder, I think she was. But it seems like there's interest from other people. So, yeah, it's not been the greatest of seasons, I don't think. All those sort of red marks against us in league games are looking more and more common, and the green marks where we win games are looking less and less common. So yeah, it's not been the greatest of seasons, I'll be honest.
So where do you see the rest of the season going, and what do you think Reading need to achieve that? I.e., any input from in the transfer market, or a certain player getting their goal scoring boots on, or returning injury? What do you think Reading can achieve, and what do they need to achieve it?
I mean, we need Deanne Rose back for sure. I have no idea what the timeline on her injury is on that. So yeah, I think she would be a real difference for us. I'd be surprised if we see her with us next year as well, because she is that good and she is that young. So that is what we really seem to be missing. I think it's such a commonplace as well. It doesn't matter where you are, if you're in the WSL or right down to tier 7 in the development division of somewhere, is that you just need a proven goal scorer a lot of the time. And whilst we've got players who are consistent at getting a few in the back of the net, like 3 or 4 goals a season is not ideal. That's not what we need. So yeah, it's been a real blow for us losing Deanne Rose, especially considering she had such a great season last year. And this year looks like with us being able to keep so many players that actually this could be a real decent run for us this year. And then her being out has been a real blow. So yeah, it's a really tricky one. I think, yeah, like I said, I don't know when she'll be back. So, but we need her essentially.
So just having a quick look back through league tables over the last couple of years, and 2-3 seasons ago, Birmingham City stayed up with 7 points, which is obviously where Reading are. Most teams that stay up get between 11 and 14. I think last season 14 was second bottom. So you could argue Reading are already safe, but you could also say they probably need 1 or 2 more wins just in case either Leicester or Brighton or both get their act together.
Yeah,
I think it's just one down.
Yeah,
it's just one down. So it's Leicester look well, unless something big changes around it. They did have a big uptick the second half of last season, Leicester, but they do look in a lot of trouble this year. So Reading may well end up being safe, but how would you grade this season so far if you were giving it a grading mark?
I'm gonna go for a 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10. Oh,
yeah,
not ideal.
No, not at all.
Personally, I think they've shown fight. They haven't necessarily got the results, but I think they've shown a bit of steely determination. So I'd probably mark them slightly higher than that. But they are still where they are. But they're also a victim of sort of the type of club that Reading is. I keep seeing that they're the only team in the FAWSL not properly affiliated or run by a senior men's side or a Premier League men's side, which, you know, has its disadvantages. Reading Football Club in the Championship has its financial restrictions at the moment, so that's hardly the simple fact that they're still in the FAWSL is certainly something to be celebrated, but obviously everybody will want more than that, and there's no reason that they can't.
Okay, well, going from one club that needs to show a bit of fight in the second half of the season to potentially two clubs as we move on to the National League South and our two Berkshire sides, Slough and Hungerford Town, both having a bit of a tough season. Tom, you wanted to talk about these guys. Slough probably slightly more disappointing than Hungerford, although Hungerford are currently at the foot of the table, 16 points from 24 games and 7 points from safety. Slough, 2 points above the drop zone, 25 points from 25 games in 18th spot currently. Both sort of looking at a bit of trouble and probably need to up their game a little bit in the second half of the season.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because they've both had some off the field changes, or both going to suffer some off the field changes, but both ironically showed some real fight at the weekend. Hungerford won for only the fourth time so far this season. They beat Dover Athletic 1-0, and Dover are that's certainly a
mid-table.
Certainly not one you'd expect them necessarily to win. And Slough came back from 3-0 down with some absolute belters against Tonbridge Angels, Berkshire's favourite club, Tonbridge Angels. I never tire of seeing bad things happen to Tonbridge Angels on the pitch. I wouldn't wish ill of them off the pitch, but it's I feel like I've taken that report they wrote a little bit too much to heart. I just think it was sort of a silly thing to write. So yeah, they've both shown a little bit of fight, but they probably, you know, Hungerford really need to put some results together. Danny Robinson is obviously an excellent manager and certainly very capable of putting that together. So I wouldn't count them out yet. Certainly none of the bottom four. Bobby Wilkinson's at Weymouth. I would certainly not put all of that. You know, no one is adrift. Even Hungerford at the bottom foot of the table, they are not adrift. And a few results in the right direction wouldn't go amiss. They are obviously losing their chairman, Pat Chambers, at the end of the season. He's going to Gloucester City along with his wife Nikki. And Slough, they, you know, as I say, they you know, both teams have shown fight. Slough have changed managers. An era-defining duo in Neil Baker and John Underwood left, and they've now got Scott Davies in charge. You know, they're making a reasonable fight of it, and I don't think Slough will be in any trouble come the end of the season. But I think they've certainly got their budget restrictions, and they are a bit limited in what they can do. And you know, money talks, especially in the Vanarama National League.
Yeah, that's quite tricky for both clubs at the moment. I did see this week Hungerford added a new head scout, so
Yes.
Hopefully they'll be able. That signals an intention to perhaps bring in a couple of players or identify a few to bring in at least, and maybe that can lead to sort of an uptick in fortunes for them. But like I say, I think with Slough, they'll probably be okay, but getting a few results on the board early is always good. You don't want to be going into your last 4 or 5 games needing to get points on the board. So hopefully they can do just that. But another side that have been putting lots of points on the board recently is Bracknell Town. Earlier in the season, they were sort of floating around mid-table, maybe towards the bottom half of the Southern League Premier Division South. And that was obviously no disgrace, being it as it was their first time in their history they were at this level. But
that's not entirely true, Rob. That's not quite true. They have played Step 3 before.
Oh, yes. Sorry. First time.
For a long time.
For a long time, they're at this level. And, yeah, having been promoted last season, I should say. But they've also had a change of manager, perhaps not Bobby Wilkinson, who had taken them up. Ended up, as you mentioned, leaving for Weymouth, and they was replaced by Carl Withers and Jamie McClurg. And after sort of an initial I wouldn't call it shaky start, but perhaps a more solid start. They seem to be going from strength to strength. They're currently sitting in sixth of the table, one place outside the playoffs, but they do have a lot of games in hand over the teams above them. They're on 20 games, 36 points, and every team above them are on at least 22 games, if not more. They're only 1 point outside those playoff positions. They're ticking along really well. Of course, this is before we even mentioned the FA Cup run. They're ticking along really well, and it's for what was turning into perhaps an understandable sort of consolidating season, shall we say? Maybe it was looking slightly like that way towards the beginning of the year. Bracknell fans will probably be thinking a little bit about promotion now.
Yeah, absolutely, and why not? Playoffs, certainly. You'd expect them to be in the playoffs come the end of the season. They've made a few changes. I think Ben Harris and Guy Hollis. Certainly Ben Harris is I don't know much about Guy Hollis, but certainly Ben Harris I've seen play numerous times, and in his previous spell at Bracknell as well. And the very least they've got the goals to reach the playoffs. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Did you see their? I know it's more of a mid-season review, but from the weekend, a penalty that may not have been legal or was adjudged to be illegal. Did anyone see this?
I've watched that video so many times, and I still can't see that first touch that everyone's talking about.
Yeah,
no, certainly not from the angle that the video.
Angle for sure.
If the ref's seen that, fair enough. But
if anyone hasn't seen this, listeners, it's available on Twitter, on social media. You'll be able to dig it out there. But what's happened is Bracknell have had a penalty awarded. The striker, who was it? Mikael Platt, I think it was. Yeah, sticks the ball into the top corner. The camera angle is from behind the goal, but it's ruled out for a double touch apparently. So, I mean, from the camera angle, as Abby and Tom say, from that camera angle, I cannot see a double touch, but
I've got like full CSI with it as well. I've like slowed it down, paused it. Like, I can't see it. It's like this is a very niche reference for younger children, but in The Incredibles, when Dash puts a pin on his teacher's chair, and he's like, "See, you can see it move with the CSI." Yeah, that's what it makes me think of. I'm like, do I need some new glasses? I don't know. Yeah,
no, I think you're fine. I don't think anyone can see it in that video. If it did happen, then it's perhaps the referee was at a better angle, but it might have proved crucial as they ended up losing 2-1 to Chesham. Chesham, one of the few sides above them in the table. So an unlucky defeat perhaps, but still Bracknell are well in contention for the playoffs. And like we say, this is before we mentioned the FA Cup. I was talking to some Bracknell fans after Carl and Jamie's first game in charge. They drew, I think it was 1-1 with Hanwell, who at that point in the season they were in the playoff positions and looked like a decent side. They've fallen away a little bit now. Hanwell were the side that came up with Bracknell from the Isbian South Central last season. But I was talking to a few of their fans after the game, and they said, "Well, look, we've come up from step 4 last season, so." Sort of, as long as we're not in any danger of going down, it would be great to do that. And they also said to me, if we could have a bit of a cup run and potentially get to, say, the 4th qualifying round and maybe get one of the big National League sides to come down to Bottom Meadow, that would be fantastic. And obviously they did one better. They got into the first round and had not just a big National League side, but a big side, full stop, come down in Ipswich Town. So I think, however this season ends for Bracknell, is always going to go down as a positive one. Good. Any more to add on that before we move on, lady and gent? Nope. Nope, not at all. Okay, well, let's move on to the Combined Counties Premier Division North then. We have a bit of a Berkshire-themed title race going on, and with a game coming up very soon that will perhaps go some way to deciding which way this title race will go. Abby, you're probably the best place to talk about this. We currently have Ascot top of the table, 17 games played, 46 points. being chased down by Reading City. 16 games played, 42 points. Bit of a gap there, but Reading City do have a game in hand. So, how do you think this season has gone so far for Ascot?
Can't really complain, can I?
No.
No, couldn't really have gone much better, to be honest. Just really, I've sort of run out of superlatives to describe how good the season is and how great the team are. It's going really well. Obviously, we're on a nice cup run with the FA Vars right now as well.
Absolutely.
So, I think we talked about at the beginning of the season as well about how competitive we thought that this division was going to be, especially at the top of the table. So, and it's absolutely proven to be that. So, it's been a real joy to. I mean, this is very cheesy, but it's been a joy to be part of the journey with them so far. So, just more of the same, please. Essentially,
brilliant. Have you had much of a chance to view Reading City, your closest contenders? And what do you make of their season so far?
I mean, I was there at the game when we went to Scows Lane. So, I mean, Tom was there too as well.
Yes.
It was a very non-league game of football.
Cool, dear.
I'll say
yes.
On that game. I don't know, Tom, what did you make of it?
Well, I thought the game itself was. It was the kind of game where it just looked like no one was ever going to score. He could have played all week. It was one of those where both teams are strong defensively, both teams are good up front, and they just completely cancelled each other out into almost like there was a lot of people there watching that game. I don't know what the actual attendance was, but it was just one of those games where and then when Ascot did score, they got that it was always going to take a little bit of magic, and it really was a great goal. It's actually in the goal of the month competition. I haven't seen the results yet, and I haven't sent the video off to Neil Baker yet, so we don't know who the winner of that is. But it was going to take a little bit of magic to get a goal to break the deadlock, and Ascot did break the deadlock. Unfortunately, for them, Reading City also came back because suddenly it was all up the other end, and I know anybody who I know who follows Ascot will almost certainly disagree with me, and I imagine anybody who I know who follows Reading City will probably disagree with me. But I would say a draw in that game was an absolutely fair result. I did ask Simon Johnson about it because about how Reading City play, because obviously last season they were nowhere near. And I sort of asked him what's changed, because there's not a massive personnel change, but I said to him that you guys are really direct this season, and all he said to me was we've sort of taken a bit on board what other teams did last season that was successful and tried to be a bit more like that, and it certainly seems to be working. So that's obviously that's really good. We've got as you say, we've got a title race, and I think last season neither side particularly looked like they were going to certainly win the division, but this time round, who knows? Could be either. I think Ascot probably have. You'd certainly say Ascot were the favourites, but Reading City are there for the upset.
Yeah, absolutely. Reading City, we should mention, also still undefeated in that division. So,
I've forgotten about that. I hadn't clocked that, so that's great.
Yeah, 13 wins and 3 draws so far. Cool. But obviously their next, actually I haven't checked who they're playing at the weekend, but their next
Flackwell.
Flackwell. That is a toughie. Another one of the sort of promotion contenders. They're at home to Flackwell, and then away to Ascot in midweek on Tuesday. That'll be an interesting one to follow for the local football fans. But like I say, 2 going up from that division, or potentially 2 going up, 1 automatically, and then 1 going into a playoff with the one of the 3rd or 4th bottom sides from step 4. So we could have 1 side going up and 1 side in the playoffs, and hopefully going up as well, which would be tremendous. But obviously there's a few other teams to consider in that division, although Ascot and Reading City do have a little bit of a cushion in terms of games in hand. Egham Town, Flackwell Heath are both only a point behind Reading City, but they have played 4 games more than the local side. quite interesting there. At the bottom of the table, Woking and Embrook looking a little bit in trouble. They're currently third bottom, 2 go down, but they've played far more games than any of the other teams around them. They played 20 games, 14 points. And North Greenford, who are below them, are only 2 points behind with 8 games in hand. There are a couple of sides, Hollyport and Wokingham and Crowmarsh, that are probably in that mix as well. You could even perhaps argue Windsor are, although they're looking a bit more mid-table. But Wokingham and Embrook, probably the Berkshire side, looking in the most trouble at the moment at the bottom of the division, and they are facing off against Hollyport this weekend. So that's a big fixture, or 6-pointer down the end of the table. So hopefully Woking and Embrook can pull away and Hollyport can stay out of trouble, because I think certainly Hollyport and probably Woking as well have made a bit of a progress as the season has gone on. Right, before we go on to the Combined Counties Div 1, you guys wanted to talk about another side that is in contention for promotion, and that's Woodley United Ladies. Abby, why don't you give us the lowdown on how they're doing remind me which division it's in.
They are in the Southern Regions, Division 1 North.
Brilliant.
So fellow Berkshire sides, Caversham United and Eversley in California are also in there with them. But I think, do you know what? I'm going to take lots of credit here because I said Woodley would be ones to watch this season. So I'm going to assume they probably listened to the podcast and thought, yeah, Abby said we're going to be good this season, so we'll be good this season. No, not at all. Not at all. I think... I imagine Mark Surtees would have reluctantly taken relegation from the Premier Division. It's probably quite a difficult decision to do, kind of elect yourself to be relegated. But I think it's probably been the best thing for them, actually. And they're a team that haven't really, again, also a team similar to a few other Berkshire sides who haven't really changed in terms of personnel. They've been playing together for quite some time, the kind of core group of players. But they're just on an absolute stormer of a run right now. I think it's 8 clean sheets that they've got this season so far. And I think it's 5 unbeaten their run at the moment. They absolutely hammered Carterton, who are bottom of the table at the weekend, scoring 9-0. I think it was Molly Haynes with 5 goals, I think, but everyone was getting involved. Even Ellen Surtees scored a goal, and she's a staunch defender. So, I think the spoils were shared very nicely amongst the team for them. They were beaten by Ascot in the Cup, but I actually think they're probably looking to have a decent league run right now, and they're probably less bothered about any kind of cup runs. But just really some really decent scores from them, and those clean sheets are making all the difference for them as well. So I think they're almost certainly looking for promotion again back into the Premier Division. Milton are ahead of them, but they've got a game in hand as well. So they're hot on the heels with Milton, absolutely. So they're just having a really fantastic season, and I think it's deserved, really. They've had a couple of tricky seasons in the last couple of years. So I think they've kind of found their feet finally, really. They were sitting at the bottom of the table for 2 seasons, I think it was. And I think the previous season, they just about stayed up. I think since the regional split for the Southern region, this has been a really good chance for them to really push on and make a difference. So I mean,
it sounds like although that elected relegation would probably have been a tough decision to make, it was probably a very good one. Just rather than sort of hanging around trying to avoid relegation at the bottom of a table, it's meant they can sort of come down a level and actually be a bit more competitive. And like you say, I saw them towards the beginning of this run they're on at the moment play home against Kidlington Youth, and they won that game 3-0. And Kidlington, who are a decent mid-table side, never really looked like scoring at all, to be honest, in that game. And Woodley scored 3 early goals, and that was it, game over. So they look like a very sort of efficient, strong, organised unit. So good luck to them. And in the Premier Division on the Southern Region Women's Football League, as we've got you on, Abby, we might as well talk about another side that will be looking to go up, although they're slightly further behind their competitors. Ascot United, they are currently in second place, 7 points behind Abingdon United, but they do have 2 games in hand. So another potential promotion chase there.
Yeah, absolutely. Ambitions are strong this season as well, and that's reflected in the team. They're also a team who have kept a lot of the core group, but made a few really good additions as well. It's a funny old division, the Premier Division. I'll be honest, in the Southern region, people take points in the strangest of games, so you never quite know how you're going to get on, really. But there definitely is that element of competition in that top 3. And Abingdon and Bournemouth are yet to play each other, if I remember rightly. So there's still plenty to play for. But I think the pressure is on Ascot. They do need to win the last 5 games of the season, which sounds mental to be in January and they've only got 5 to play. I guess that's the quirks of women's football when there's fewer teams in the division, and obviously that regionalisation has been really important, but also means that the pool's a little bit smaller across the board. But yeah, I think the ambition is definitely there, so they'll give it a good go, certainly. I think they've brought on another coach as well, so the coaching staff is 3 strong now with Daryl and Alex, and they've brought on a guy called Josh as well, who's definitely making a difference and making an impact. So I think Alex has been really appreciative of having him on board. The FA Cup run obviously was a real disappointment, but I think actually it's meant they've switched focus back to the league now. So I think despite the fact there's going to probably be a few more postponements due to the weather, so the season might be a bit longer than actually 5 games suggests. But I think they're still definitely up there, ones to watch without a doubt.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully we talk about some Berkshire promotion success on the in the women's side and the Southern Regions Football League at the end of the season. Okay, so we'll jump back now to the men's side and talk about the title picture in the combined counties Division 1, because there are 3 sides in the immediate contention for promotion, and probably a couple of others that will be sort of have one eye on the playoffs as well. So Tom, do you want to take us through this? As Langley top of the league, should we say? 21 games, 47 points. Sandhurst in third, 17 games, so 4 games in hands on Langley, 42 points, only 5 games behind. Berks County also there, 20 games played, 37 points, so 10 points behind Langley, but having played 1 game fewer. In this division, 1 goes up automatically and 4 into the playoffs. And, Woodley and Eversley in California, perhaps further down the table, having one eye, just looking at those that playoff picture. They're both only 4 points outside the last place in the playoffs. But let's start with the top there. Let's start with Langley and the title race. Have you seen much of them this season? What do you make of them, Tom?
The most I've seen of Langley is various clips on Twitter and on YouTube. But it's hard not to sort of pay attention to them, really. They are scoring goals for fun. I don't know if any of you saw the back heel goal in their recent 5-0 win. Who was that against? The 5-0 win, Brookhouse. There's a back heel goal. If that's not in contention for goal of the month for January, then there's something seriously wrong. But they've been dishing out hammerings left, right, and centre. I think you still have to look at Sandhurst Town as probably the favourites. They simply have 4 games in hand. Now it's a very much a points on paper versus points in reality. So they've still got to go and win those 4 games in hand that they've got. But you would think, and this is despite Sandhurst having a managerial change this season, you'd expect them to eventually top the table. But I'm not sure if the 2 sides have met yet this season, so they may well have 1 or 2 games against each other to play. I didn't get a chance to look at the fixtures, but I don't know if all the fixtures.
I don't think they have.
I don't think they have. No, I don't think they've played each other yet. So that's
Langley and Berks County have played each other. Berks County won that 3-1.
Yes, you're right. There's 1 game on the 18th of Feb Sandhurst v Langley, and then the reverse fixture is on the 10th of April. So if Langley won both of those, then that swings things around a bit, doesn't it? So there's certainly some big games coming up for Langley, as you say, Abby. Berkshire County they've got to play. Deportivo Galicia they've got to play as well. So there's a few, but they're not shy on dishing out the odd hammering here and there. I think they've scored 5 goals, certainly 3 or 4 times so far this season. 6 there against Cove. So I just can't understand. There was a 0-0 against Bagshot. Was it? I think Bagshot. Anyway, whoever it was. But yeah, they certainly score goals. They play at Arbor Park, the home of Slough Town. So there's a lot going on there, and they seem to be. They've certainly turned things around. They've got new ownership. I confess I don't know a lot about that, but we are trying to do a little bit more around Langley. So but as I say, Sandhurst will certainly be the favourites. But there's a couple of games coming up that could throw things wide open. I think you have to say Langley have to win both of those games against Sandhurst to stand a chance of the title.
Yeah, well, like I say, both teams still in contention for promotion, as there is the playoff picture to have as well. But we should also say that Sandhurst have dished out some pretty big hammerings. They've only played once since the end of November, and that was on the 27th of December, and winning 6-0 against Hillingdon Borough, just after Christmas there. So pretty good themselves, and they've also won 10-0 at CB Hounslow earlier in the season. So yeah, they get a few good goals as well. So the games between those two sides could be quite entertaining. And with Berks County also there in the mix, looking for perhaps more of a promotion playoff place at the moment rather than perhaps the title. I think we've got a lot of Berkshire interest in the Combined Counties Div 1 at the moment. It's looking like a really fun league to follow this year. There's also a couple of teams like FC Deportivo Galicia, who are only 4 points behind Langley with a game in hand, so they can't be counted out as well. But we could be talking about 2 Berkshire sides going up towards the end of the season. Before we wrap off, is there any other clubs or divisions you want to talk about before we end the show?
Yeah, just wanted to really quickly flag. I haven't had a chance to write this up yet, and I've been meaning to, but just Thames Valley League Premier Division. You've got Yateley United kind of running away with it. They beat Finch Hampstead the other week. It's Yateley United's to lose now. 13 wins from 13 games. I presume they have applied to go up. The ground is certainly there. If Yateley United aren't step 6 side next season, I'll be very, very surprised. And they looks like they will stop Finch Hampstead's 3 in a row, which is obviously good variety in that division is good. Burfield will probably be the other challengers, but having said that, they've lost 2 already this season. They've only played 6 games, so they are well off the pace at the moment. I think the reason I brought Yateley up was because while they had 500 odd at their game against Finch Hampstead over Christmas, at the other end of the table, the league's lost 2 sides in Windlesham and Chobham and Charvey Sports. Both sides have pulled out of the league. They're not the first sides to pull out of the league this season either, with Rotherfield. And I feel certain there was another side that pulled out as well. One at the top end of the table, they're getting crowds of 500, albeit on a favourable day just after New Year's Day, and a favourable kickoff that meant people could get more than one game in a day. But still, 500. Whilst at the other end, you've got teams pulling out. So it's a bit of a contrast, top and bottom of that table. So we'll see. Of course, I think the other team I was thinking of was Mortimer, but Mortimer didn't fold. They just moved to Hellenic 2.
Yeah. So I think, Burfield have only played 6 games because they played a few games against these teams that have now folded. Yeah. And so they've had the results. And in fact, Yateley's record was even better. They had a 100% record, I think, from 14 or 15 games before these 2 clubs pulled out. But yeah, Yateley did apply to go up last season, and for some reason were unsuccessful.
Because who else went up instead? Someone went up instead? Can't remember now. Don't know. But yeah,
Did they? I don't think anyone. I'm
No,
not
it should
sure.
have been Finch, shouldn't it? But
Well, yeah.
they didn't.
It's anyone from the top 5,
Yeah.
as long as only one allowed from the division goes up every year, but you have to pass the ground grading to do it.
Yes.
And you have to, so it's anyone from the top 5. You can't just have anyone in the division lower down. But Finch, its ground doesn't meet the gradings. And then I think it was Burfield next, and they obviously don't. So it goes further and further down. But yes, Yateley weren't allowed last year. I'm not quite sure why. But one other thing to note is that the reverse fixture, Finch Hampstead versus Yateley, is happening this weekend. So if anyone is local and wants to go see a game and it's not rained off, keep your fingers crossed, then that would be a pretty good fixture to head down to if you want to see some Step 7 football.
It would also just be remiss of me really quickly not to mention Newbury in Hellenic Division 2 East.
Oh, yes.
8 wins from 8 games in the league. They also beat Reading YMCA in the County Cup last weekend. They've scored 32 goals, conceding just 2. They're currently homeless. They play at Lambourne Sports. I think it's Lambourne Sports. I might be getting that wrong. Apologies. Anyway, if you want to go and watch Newbury, they're a really good side. They won't be going up because you can't. The Hellenic 2s are outside the pyramid, so they won't be a Division 1 side next season. I'm not quite sure what the future holds for what Newbury want to do. I'm not even sure they can apply. They'd have to. I think they'd have to be back in the Thames Valley Premier League to do that. But maybe that's what they'll do. I don't know. But yeah, it just feels remiss to not mention them.
Didn't someone like Charvey come up from the Hellenic 2
They
1 year?
did,
Maybe
that was before. The Division 2s were sort of part of the system then.
Okay.
It was sort of back when the Hellenic kind of had a bit more ability to do what they wanted, whereas they don't anymore.
Gotcha.
They get told now who's going where.
Okay, and sounds good. And Abby, is there anyone you want to call out, or just who's having a good season and one to watch out for before we wrap up?
I imagine Ascot's reserves side, the Phoenix side, would be gunning for promotion. They're currently sitting second in Division 1 of the Thames Valley, so it could be that. If promotion goes well for the first team, obviously they'll be out in the Southern Region, but we could still have another Ascot Southern Region side in there if they can defeat, I think it's St Peter's Bradwell possibly. So yeah, they're going fairly well. Generally across the Thames Valley, most of our Berkshire sides are sort of mid-table so far this season. I think obviously where there's been the big restructure, it's been a bit of a move about for people, so readjusting to playing some new teams and stuff like that. So, but I think that just shows how much more competitive another season for women's football's been in the area in general. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that we're seeing lots of our teams mid-table. So yeah.
Good stuff indeed. All right. Well, that's about it from us this week. I hope you've enjoyed the slightly ad hoc mid-season review. Hopefully we've covered your club and you're looking for some promotion or silverware at the end of the season. And if you are, we're looking forward to reporting on that as the months go by. But for now, you can follow us on Twitter at FI Berkshire, Facebook, search for Football in Berkshire, Instagram, and even LinkedIn, or just go old school and go to www.footballinberkshire.co.uk. Otherwise, we will hopefully see you next week. So until then, it's goodbye from Tom.
Bye.
Goodbye from Abby.
See ya.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.